The real reason he keeps coming back, then pulling away. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a never-ending cycle? He shows up, makes you feel like the most special person in the world, and then disappears. No explanation. Without warning, you stand there redoing every conversation in your head, wondering what you did wrong. And when you're finally starting to move on, it comes back, with that smile, that message, that perfect excuse, and you fall again. But what if I told you that this has nothing to do with you? What if the real motive behind this behavior was buried deep in his psyche, in unconscious forces that he doesn't even understand? Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, dedicated his life to unraveling these mysteries of the human mind. And what he discovered can completely change the way you see this man who can neither stay nor really leave. Get ready, because what you're about to discover will free you from this cycle forever. 1. Because he always comes back. When it disappears from your life, you feel as if a part of you has been ripped away. The days pass slowly, you try to distract yourself, but that emptiness remains. And then, out of nowhere, he reappears. The message arrives at the exact moment when you were starting to breathe again. And you ask yourself, why now? Why just when I was almost making it? Carl Jung discovered something fascinating about the human psyche that perfectly explains this behavior. Within each person is what he called the unconscious, a part of the mind that works without us noticing, making decisions and creating patterns without our conscious permission. This unconscious is driven by powerful forces, and one of them is the need for balance. When he moves away from you, something inside him gets out of tune. It's not necessarily romantic love. It is something deeper and more primitive. There is one psychological phenomenon that Jung studied extensively: the need for completeness. Every human being unconsciously seeks what he feels he lacks. When he is close to you, he experiences intensity, connection, vulnerability. It scares him because it touches parts of him that are dormant or repressed, so he runs away. But when it is far away, the other extreme manifests itself: emptiness, loneliness, the feeling that something essential is missing. And that's where he comes back. His return does not happen by chance. It comes back when the discomfort of absence becomes greater than the fear of presence. It is an unconscious calculation, an internal balance that tilts from one side to the other. During the distance, his mind begins to idealize what you had. Memories get softer, difficult moments are forgotten, and what's left is an edited version of the relationship, a version that seems safe to revisit. Jung also talked about projection, a mechanism by which we put into others what we cannot see in ourselves. When he is away, you become a blank canvas where he projects everything he wants: acceptance, comfort, passion, peace. You become the magic solution to his inner chaos. But this projection only works at a distance. When he comes back and finds a real person with real needs and real emotions, the illusion begins to crack. The cycle of going back and forth is also linked to what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who we really are. Many men live disconnected from themselves, following scripts that society has written for them. They work, provide, keep everything under control. But deep down, there is a part of them that longs for something deeper, more true. You represent that something. When he is with you, this sleeping part awakens. And that's terrifying for someone who has built his entire identity on control and predictability. So he comes back not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You touch something inside it that no one else can touch. And that's at the same time why he can't stay and can't really leave. You have become the mirror where he sees parts of himself that he is not yet ready to integrate. 2. The fear he does not admit. There is a fear that lives hidden in the chest of many men, so deep that they themselves cannot name it. It's not fear of commitment, as they say. It is not fear of losing freedom. It's something much more primitive, much more visceral. It is the fear of disappearing completely within another person. Jung studied archetypes for decades, universal patterns of behavior that exist in the collective unconscious of all humanity. One of these archetypes is that of the hero, the one who needs to keep his identity separate, his autonomy, his sense of self. For many men, this archetype is deeply rooted. They see themselves as lonely, strong, independent individuals. And when a true emotional connection emerges, that archetype panics. What happens is that real intimacy requires dissolution of boundaries. It requires letting someone else into the darkest corners of the soul, into the places where we harbor shame, insecurity, fragility. For a man who has built his entire identity on strength and control, this seems like a death sentence. Not physical death, but ego death. That part of the personality that he believes to be who he is. When you are close and the connection deepens, something inside him feels that it is losing its contours. Conversations get more intimate. You get to really know him, and he realizes he's letting you into forbidden territory. The internal alarm goes off. It is not rational. It is not planned. It's instinctive. His body responds as if it were facing real danger, and the only reaction he knows is to run away. Jung called this the fear of the anima, the feminine aspect that exists within every man. The anima represents emotion, intuition, receptivity, connection. But in a society that teaches men to be tough, logical, and emotionally detached, that part gets repressed. When he approaches you, your anima awakens. Suddenly, he feels things he doesn't know how to name, vulnerabilities he doesn't know how to process. And this terrifies him because it means confronting everything he has always denied in himself. The removal is a desperate attempt to regain control. Away from you, he can rebuild the walls, strengthen the defenses, go back to being the man he believes he should be. He becomes convinced that the emotional intensity was exaggerated, that he was losing his mind, that he needs space to think. But what he really needs is the courage to feel. This fear is also connected to past experiences that he doesn't always consciously remember. Perhaps in childhood he learned that showing emotion was a sign of weakness. Perhaps he was ridiculed when he cried. Perhaps he saw his father shut down emotionally and learned that real men don't allow themselves to be vulnerable. These experiences have created layers of protection that now block any attempt at genuine connection. The most tragic thing is that this fear prevents him from experiencing exactly what he most desires: to be seen, accepted, and loved for who he really is. But as long as he doesn't face that fear, as long as he doesn't sink into that discomfort and learn that intimacy is not annihilation, he will keep coming back and drifting away, and you will continue to be just the audience of this internal drama that he stages alone. When someone's actions and words don't match, it's not confusion, it's the unconscious speaking. In the Jung Method, link pinned in the first comment, you'll understand why some bonds feel magnetic and how to stop losing yourself in them. 3. His relationship with his mother. It may seem strange to talk about his mother when we are trying to understand why he can't maintain a stable relationship with you. But Jung discovered something revolutionary. The first relationship a man has with a woman determines how he will relate to all the others for the rest of his life. And that first relationship is with the mother. The connection between mother and child is the most intense experience of emotional fusion that a human being can have. In the first years of life, the child does not see himself as separated from the mother. They are one. Gradually, the boy needs to separate, create his own identity, become an individual. But this process of separation is traumatic, painful, and never completely resolved. When the mother has been overprotective, controlling, or emotionally invasive, the boy grows up with a deep wound. He associates female intimacy with suffocation, with loss of autonomy, with self-annulment. In his unconscious, every woman who gets too close carries the traces of the mother who did not let him breathe. And he needs to flee to survive. On the other hand, if his mother was distant, cold, or emotionally absent, he grows up with a void that he tries to fill in every woman he meets. He always comes back because he is looking for that maternal love he never had, that unconditional welcome. But when you offer that, he panics because it puts him back in that place of a vulnerable and dependent child. And men don't want to feel that way. Jung called this the mother complex, a psychological pattern that works like an automatic program, activated every time there is emotional intimacy with a woman. Man does not consciously choose to react in this way. It is something that comes from such deep layers of the psyche that he himself does not understand why he acts this way. He just feels an inexplicable urgency to create distance. There is also the question of the idealized mother. If he grew up hearing that his mother is perfect, that she is a saint, that she sacrificed everything for him, he develops an unrealistic image of what a woman should be. No real woman can compete with this fantasy. You may be amazing, but you will never be the goddess that lives in his mind. And unconsciously, he feels like he's betraying his mother by giving himself emotionally to another woman. His coming and going may be a repetition of the pattern he had with his mother. If their relationship was unstable, if she sometimes suffocated him and sometimes neglected him, he learned that love works like that, with dramatic ups and downs, with approximation and distancing. For him, this is not dysfunctional. It's familiar. It is the only kind of love he knows. Resolving this would require him to do a deep work of looking at this primary relationship and understanding how it has shaped his capacity to love. But most men will never do that. It's easier to blame women for being demanding, needy, or complicated than to admit that they carry an unresolved wound with the first woman in their lives. And as long as that wound remains untouched, he will continue to seek and flee at the same time. 4. When intimacy becomes a threat. On first dates, everything seems magical. The conversations flow. You laugh at the same things. There is an undeniable chemistry. He shares stories, plans, dreams. You feel like you finally found someone you can be yourself with. The connection is real, palpable. But then, just as things start to get really close, something changes, and you don't understand what happened. Jung realized that for many people, especially those who have built up strong psychological defenses, genuine intimacy sets off all internal alarm bells. Intimacy isn't just about sharing a bed or spending time together. Real intimacy is about being seen in the most vulnerable parts, in the insecurities, in the flaws, in the contradictions. It's when someone knows not only their successes, but also their secret fears. For a man who has spent his entire life constructing a persona, a social mask that shows only the acceptable aspects of himself, the idea of being fully known is terrifying. This persona is the armor he wears at work, with friends, in the family. It is the confident, successful man who has everything under control. But you, when you're too close, start to see beyond the armor. And he's not ready for that. When intimacy deepens, you start asking different questions. No longer superficial questions about favorite movies or plans for the weekend. These are questions about why he acts in a certain way, about what he really feels, about his fears and weaknesses. Each question is like a finger poking at a wound that he has spent years trying to forget exists. His body responds before his mind. He starts to feel anxiety when you are going to meet. He becomes irritable for no apparent reason. Find excuses to cancel plans. It's not that he doesn't like you. It's that being around you requires a level of emotional honesty that he doesn't know how to offer. He literally doesn't have the psychological tools necessary to navigate real intimacy. Jung talked about the importance of integrating all parts of ourselves, the good and the bad, the strong and the fragile. But society teaches men to do the opposite. Hide weakness, suppress emotion, always appear strong. So when you create a safe space where he could finally open up, he doesn't know what to do with it. It's like offering freedom to someone who has spent their entire life in prison. It's as scary as it is liberating. The withdrawal happens because he needs to regain a sense of control. When he is far away, he can return to the version of himself he knows, which is predictable, which does not require diving into deep emotional waters. He can be the man of the persona again, without having to confront who he really is underneath it. But here's the cruel paradox. What he wants most is exactly what he fears most. Deep down, he wants to be known completely and still be accepted. He wants to be able to take off his armor and rest. But the fear of rejection, of being seen as weak or inadequate, is greater than the desire for connection. So he chooses familiar solitude over creepy intimacy. And you stand in the middle, not understanding that the war is not with you, it's with yourself. 5. The pattern he repeats without knowing it. If you look at his relationship history, you'll probably find a pattern. Different women, different situations, but always the same ending. He approaches, he moves away, things end badly. And he always has an explanation. She was crazy, she was too needy, she wanted to control his life. But the truth Jung discovered is that we all repeat the same patterns until we learn the lesson they try to teach us. There is something in the human psyche that makes us gravitate toward the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. Jung called this the repetition compulsion, an unconscious force that causes us to recreate the same traumatic or problematic situations over and over again. It's not masochism. It's not stupidity. It is the psyche's attempt to solve something that has been left unfinished. When he was a child or teenager, some experience profoundly marked the way he understands relationships. It may have been the separation of parents, a first love that ended traumatically, an emotional abandonment, a betrayal. This experience created a mental model of how relationships work. And since then, he has been recreating this model without realizing it. The fascinating part is that he's not consciously choosing similar women or similar situations. The unconscious does it for him. He's attracted to you because something in you, in the way you relate, in the dynamics you create together, activates that old pattern. It's as if his psyche says, "Oh, I know this movie. Let's watch it again to see if this time I end up different." But of course it doesn't end up different. It brings the same automatic responses, the same fears, the same defenses. When the relationship reaches a certain point, that point where things got bad in the past, it goes into survival mode. His body responds as if it were living that old situation again. And he does the only thing he knows how to do: run away. Jung believed that these patterns can only be broken through consciousness. As long as he does not look at his past relationships and perceive repetition, as long as he does not question why it always ends the same way, he will continue in the cycle. But bringing this to consciousness requires courage and brutal honesty with oneself. And most people would rather keep blaming others than take that painful plunge. The pattern also serves a psychological purpose. It keeps him safe. If all relationships end the same way, he never has to risk anything different. You never have to really open up. You never have to trust completely. You never have to face the fear of being abandoned because it abandons you first. It's an emotional survival strategy that has become so automatic that he doesn't even realize he's doing it. You can try to be different from everyone else. You can try to give more space, be more understanding, communicate better. But as long as his pattern remains unconscious, nothing you do will change the outcome. Not because you're not good enough, but because change needs to come from within him. He needs to recognize that he is the one who is driving this car towards the same precipice every time. The saddest thing is that each repetition reinforces the pattern. Every time he ends a relationship in the same way, his mind registers, "See, I was right. Relationships always end like this." And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. He never realizes that he is the architect of his own suffering, creating the very thing he fears most. 6. The void you can't fill. When he comes back, it feels like you're the air he needs to breathe. He says he missed you, that he realized how important you are, that he doesn't want to lose you, and you believe because you want to believe. You think that he finally understood, that this time will be different. But what Jung discovered about human nature is devastating. No one can fill someone else's void. There's a hole in his soul that was dug long before you showed up. It may have been in childhood when he did not receive the love he needed. It may have been in a trauma that he never processed. It may have been in the way he was taught to repress emotions and never learned to deal with them. That emptiness is like a bottomless pit, and you're trying to fill it with a glass of water. At the beginning of the relationship, he feels that you fill that space. The passion, the novelty, the intensity of the connection give him a sense of completeness that he has never experienced. He finally feels whole. But this is an illusion. You're not filling the void, you're just distracting it from the void. And when the distraction loses its effect, the hole hurts again. Jung said that the real psychological work is learning to live with our own emptiness, to recognize that we are incomplete beings, and that this is part of the human condition. But this is too difficult a truth for most people. It is easier to look outside for what is missing inside. It's easier to believe that the right person, the right job, the right life will finally make us feel complete. When he is with you, temporarily the emptiness is silenced, but then reality sets in. Moments of boredom arrive, differences appear, routine is established, and the emptiness screams again. He looks at you and thinks, "Why do I still feel this way if I'm with someone I love?" And his conclusion is always the same. It must be the wrong person. It must be the wrong relationship. If he finds someone different, then yes, he will feel fulfilled. Withdrawal is an escape not from you, but from the painful realization that you are not the magic solution. He needs to leave in order to idealize you again, to be able to believe again that you are the answer. From a distance, he forgets the emptiness and remembers only the good times. And then it comes back, hoping that this time it will work. But of course it doesn't work, because the problem was never you. Jung also talked about the search for wholeness, the journey of integrating all the fragmented parts of ourselves to become whole. But this journey is lonely and frightening. It requires looking within, confronting demons, accepting responsibility for one's own unhappiness. And he prefers to believe that the solution is outside, that it is in you, in someone else anywhere but inside him. You can be the most amazing woman in the world. You can offer all the love and understanding possible, but you will never be able to heal a wound that you didn't cause. His emptiness needs to be filled by himself, through the hard work of self-knowledge and healing. Until he does this, he will continue to look to each new woman for the salvation he can only find within himself. And you'll remain just another failed attempt to get away from the one person he really needs to settle the score with, himself. 7. Why he needs to step aside. Withdrawal is not rejection. It is survival. It seems cruel, it seems confusing. But for him it makes perfect sense within the distorted logic of the wounded psyche. Jung understood that behaviors that seem irrational from the outside are perfectly logical when you understand the inner workings of the mind. When he's too close to you for too long, something inside him starts to collapse. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. But the constant presence of another person, especially someone he loves, begins to dissolve the defenses he's been years building up. And those defenses, as dysfunctional as they are the only thing that keeps it going. Think of psychological defenses as walls that protect a castle. Inside the castle are all the emotions he doesn't know how to process: pain, fear, inadequacy, shame. He built these tall, strong walls so that he never had to look at what's inside. But when you're close, with your empathy and acceptance, the walls start to crack. And suddenly he's feeling things he swore he'd never feel again. The physical and emotional distance allows him to rebuild the walls. Away from you, he may return to the state of emotional numbness he knows. It can rebury what was beginning to emerge. You can pretend that everything is fine, that you don't need anyone, that you are strong enough on your own. It's a lie, but it's a comfortable lie. Jung called this regression, when the psyche returns to a previous state of development because the next step seems too threatening. Moving forward in intimacy with yourself means growing emotionally, it means maturing, it means leaving behind old defense mechanisms. But growth hurts. Transformation is uncomfortable. Then he regresses, goes back to what is known. Remoteness also gives him the illusion of control. In a real relationship, you don't control everything. The other person has needs, emotions, wills of their own. There is unpredictability, there is risk. But when he walks away, when he keeps you at a distance, he's in control. He decides when to appear, when to leave, how much of himself to reveal. It is a type of power that compensates for the powerlessness he felt in other areas of life. There is also the fear of abandonment. It seems contradictory. Does he abandon you because he is afraid of being abandoned? But it makes sense in the logic of the unconscious. If he gets too close, allows himself to truly love, the risk of being left becomes real and terrifying. So he abandons first. It's a preventative strategy. Better to cause your own pain than to wait for someone else to do it for you. Jung observed that many people prefer the familiarity of suffering to the uncertainty of happiness. He knows how to deal with loneliness. He spent his whole life practicing. But they don't know how to deal with sustained intimacy, with someone who really cares, with the vulnerability of being loved. So he chooses known suffering instead of unknown love. Withdrawal is his way of saying, I don't know how to do this. He does not have the words to explain, perhaps not even the conscience to understand. So he just goes. And he expects you to understand something that even he doesn't understand. He expects you to wait, that you will be there when he comes back, that you will accept this pattern as if it were love. But it's not love. It's fear disguised as a need for space. 8. How do you break that cycle? Here's the truth that no one wants to hear. You can't save it. It doesn't matter how much you love, how much you understand, how much you are willing to wait. The cycle will only be broken when he decides to break it. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. It means that your power is not in changing you. It is in changing yourself and how you play that game. Jung said that the first step to any transformation is consciousness. You need to see the pattern clearly, without the lens of romantic love or the hope that this time will be different. Look at the facts. How long has he been going back and forth? How many times have you promised change and nothing has changed? How many times have you said you wouldn't accept it anymore and ended up accepting it? This brutal honesty with herself is painful but necessary. The second step is to understand your own role in this cycle. Why do you accept this behavior? What about you is attracted to someone emotionally unavailable? Jung found that we often choose people who recreate unresolved family dynamics. If you grew up seeking love from an estranged father, you may be repeating this pattern by seeking love from a man you can't give. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to recognize and change. Breaking the cycle requires setting real boundaries, not just empty threats. Limit is not manipulation to make it come back. Limit is you deciding what you accept and what you don't accept anymore in your life, regardless of what he does. It's saying, I deserve someone who stays, someone who chooses to work through discomfort instead of running away, and then act on that. The hardest part is that setting boundaries probably means letting it go for real. Not the game of pretending that you're moving forward while keeping the door open, but really close that door, lock if necessary, rebuild your life without the fantasy that it will change. This hurts more than continuing in the cycle, at least in the beginning, but it is the only real way out. Jung also talked about the importance of doing the inner work. As long as you are stuck in this cycle, you are not available for healthy love. It's not growing. It's not evolving. You're spending your emotional energy trying to fix something that can't be fixed from the outside. Redirect that energy to yourself. Therapy, self-knowledge, healing of your own wounds. You also need to stop believing that your love can heal you. This is one of the most dangerous myths of modern romance. The idea that enough love can save someone. It cannot. Love is not therapy. Love is no substitute for the psychological work he needs to do. Your only responsibility is to love yourself enough not to accept crumbs of affection from someone who can't offer a full meal. There's a possibility that when you actually walk away, when you stop being available whenever he comes back, something will change about him. Sometimes losing something real is the shock that wakes someone up. But you can't do it as a strategy to make him change. You need to do it thinking of yourself, ready to move forward even if he never wakes up. The cycle ends when you decide that your peace is worth more than his presence, when you understand that being alone is better than being on an emotional roller coaster, when you stop waiting for him to become who you need and start looking for someone who is already that person. The power has always been with you. Not the power to change you, but the power to choose differently for yourself.